Hello, I'm Raphael Chacon, Director of the Montana Museum of Art and Culture, and it's a pleasure to welcome you to Bookish Reveals, the first installment in a 7-part program in which we reveal amazing artist books in the museum's collection. But first, it's important to acknowledge that the Montana Museum of Art and Culture is on the Aboriginal territories of the Salish and Kalispel people. Today we honor the path they've always showed in caring for this place for generations to come. And we at the museum add that art has always been a part of this place. Before I describe today's program and introduce our guest scholar, I'd like to thank our generous sponsors, the Montana Arts Council and Humanities Montana, whose distribution of CARES Act support has made much of this program possible. I'd also like to thank our videographer extraordinaire, Eileen Rafferty, who is behind the camera as I speak. This program coincides with the exhibition Bookish, selections from the Dan Weinberg Collection, which opens at our galleries in the University of Montana's Part TV Center on Friday, September 25th. This exhibition features a remarkable array of illustrated books by notable artists and authors, the work of New York City publisher Vincent Fitzgerald. We hope you can visit this beautiful exhibition or check us out on our virtual tour and videos posted on our webpage and our YouTube channel. So today's guest scholar is Professor Ann Basinski, a notable singer, a diva, and teacher, and a dear friend who is both opera theater director and music professor in the School of Music at the University of Montana. Professor Basinski teaches song literature and voice at U of M. U of M's Opera Theater, which she directs, has won 7 national honors in recent years from the National Opera Association for their excellent performances. Professor Basinski hails from Indiana University and has played such roles as Zerlina in Don Giovanni, Rosina in Il Barbiere di Siviglia, and Susanna in Le Nozze di Figaro. She has been a featured soprano soloist with many orchestras and opera companies and has sung in many, many festivals around the country. Among her celebrated students, I might add, are the famous Von Trapp children, the great-grandchildren of Captain Von Trapp of Sound of Music fame. And these kids have performed to audiences all around the world. Today, Professor Basinski will reveal to us the book from the Weinberg Collection titled A Woman's Love and Life by composer Robert Schumann on 8 poems by Adelbert von Chamisso. She will present for roughly half an hour, after which we'll read questions from the audience. I invite you to use the chat function at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll do our best to read your questions aloud. This program is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel if you wish to share it with friends. A video of the book being opened page by page will also be posted on YouTube. So welcome, Professor Basinski.
Hello, I am so delighted to be here with you this morning, to be a part of Bookish, and to get to share with you this very, very wonderful book, A Woman's Love and Life, from 1990. It's a fascinating work, I think you will agree. There are lots and lots of layers within. There are so many different artists represented, different kinds of art. We have visual art with etchings, we have calligraphy, we have poetry, we have music, and these artists are reflecting and responding to a source, a seed, if you will, a musical composition, a 19th century German song cycle by the great Robert Schumann. And I teach song literature here at the University of Montana, and I could talk to you for quite a while about this very wonderful piece because it is so interesting. But as you'll see, these other artists also found it fascinating and inspiring. So let's have a look. First of all, let's take a look at the box and the cover. It's a beautiful, substantial size, as you can see. You have the title panel, A Woman's Love and Life. And as I look at the cover, it almost has the appearance of ribbons, doesn't it? That might come off of a woman's dress. And I'm looking at the colors, and they are these warm, bright, feminine sort of colors. I know, by the way, that we maybe are more thoughtful these days of labeling things as masculine or feminine because that can be confining and restrictive. But since this is looking back to a work from 1840, I'm going to go ahead with that. Though, if you prefer, couldn't you also say that these colors are fruitful? There's sort of peach and apricot and those rich colors within. It sort of looks to me like a glamorous and a beautiful scrapbook. So here's a little collection of a woman's life. It's a portrait of her relationship. She's telling us about the great love of her life, the man she ended up married to, their relationship from the beginning to the end, and the 8 songs that are in the cycle are sort of little postcards of important moments along the way. And maybe this is just a big scrapbook that is containing all this beauty. So let's open it up and have a look inside. Ah, look here. So right inside the cover is music. And in fact, it is the opening song of the cycle in beautiful calligraphy in there. So we have the other artists' reflections on the outside, and we have within the germ and the inspiration for all of it, the music itself. So I think that's absolutely beautiful. So we have here different pages in parchment. Here's our heroine. She's considering things thoughtfully, showing also for the camera there. And we have within, in this spectacular calligraphy, the credits and the information of these different artists who have contributed to this project. So, as we look on the first page, we have the artist of the etchings is Joan Busing, and the man who translated the German titles, the German poetry, is Michael Feingold, and he also is the author of the Preface, giving you lots of different information about the history of the piece, which I'll try and help you with. And here is the title. The calligraphy, by the way, is by Jerry Kelly. Here is the beautiful title piece, and it's giving you the author of the music, Robert Schumann, of the original work, and the poet, Adelbert von Chamisso. And you see down below the script of the publisher as well. Beautiful. So before we go a little further, I want to talk to you just for a moment about what this art piece, what these songs are, because everything that we're about to see grows out of them and is a response to these beautiful songs. In the 19th century, it was a beautiful period for this romantic German poetry. It was just glorious. You had Schiller, Heine, Goethe, Eichendorff, Müller, and of course Chamisso. The poetry was a little different than from the previous century. There was a more emotional and visceral connection to nature. There was also a tendency to look deeper into inner life, to emotion. And that worked well for songs. Also, the piano was still a rather new instrument. And it was very exciting to composers because, remember, its full name is the forte piano. Its great range of power. It could rage and it could whisper. There were so many colors available. And Schubert and Beethoven certainly were among those explorers reveling in the possibilities of this beautiful new instrument, this wonderful toy that the composers were enjoying. And they developed an entirely unique romantic artwork the song cycle. So what is that? It's simply a series of songs that are connected. They are describing a narrative. It's usually one speaker taking you through experiences. For example, boy meets girl, boy falls in love, boy feels everything is going well, then boy loses girl, and so on. So we have these various tracks within a story. Musically also, the songs can be connected. A tune or a fragment of an early song may reappear in a later song. At the very end, there may be music that comes back around to the beginning, but we've been through this experience with the characters, so it's different when we hear it that way. A very unique, very personal art form, absolutely. So, then came Robert Schumann, who's the author, the composer of our cycle today, and he was a son of a bookseller. He had very good literary sense, a good eye for poetry. He chose well, so that bodes well for a good song. Also, he tended to write smaller pieces anyway. If you know his piano works, such as Kinderzehen and Or Carnaval, they're little sketches rather than big epic compositions, and that also is handy for a song form. However, even though he was clearly so inclined, he didn't write much in the way of song at all until the year 1840. And that was a magical year when he was finally able to marry his beloved Clara Wieck. That is quite a story, my friends. We probably won't get all the way into it today, but they took her dad to court. Quite a production. Oh my goodness. There should be an opera about that. We'll save that for another day. But in 1840, finally embracing his bride, Schumann exploded with almost 200 songs, including this beautiful cycle. So, continuing on now with a look, I want to show you one more thing. The last page of our frontispiece, it says, for Joan Morris. She is a well-known American mezzo-soprano. Her husband is William Balcom, a very distinguished composer, and her frequent collaborator in concerts. They perform together. He's written songs for her. They wanted to perform Schumann's song cycle, and she commissioned Michael Feingold to translate for her so she could perform it in English. This is important, I think, because these songs are written where the music is such a detailed response to line by line of the poem. You can sit back and just listen to it as music, but it makes much more sense if you actually know what is being said, so I understand why she wanted to sing to her audience in English. There's also a little bit of controversy about the texts, simply because, to say the least, you couldn't argue they were a strong feminist text, or you could argue it, I suppose, but you'd have your challenges set out for you, for sure. So let's have a look. Next in our display here is a preface with lots of information, and I've already talked you through a little bit of that, so I'm going to move ahead now. Let's look at song number 1. So what has happened? She has just met the man she's going to marry, and she's stunned. It's a true coup de foudre, thunderstroke, the French would say. She just wants to sit in her room and catch her breath, and she's feeling tearful and doesn't really even know what to think, what to make of it all. So here you have, and we'll see this with each song. Here's the German text, and here is the English translation. And now we have an etching. And there you see, she's very contemplative there. She is considering everything. Oh, and you know what I think is beautiful? There is a line in the German that says, sonst ist Licht und farblos alles mich her. So there's no light, there's no color, anything, anywhere around me. She's telescoped into him, the world has faded to black and white. And look at the sketch again. There really isn't color there. It's just mostly an outline. So I think that that's a very beautiful nod to what is happening. So I am going to put this up for the camera to see, and I'm going to let you hear a little bit of this music. Let's see, I'll rearrange that in just a moment. You'll hear the music pulses gently, it surges a little bit. It gives us a pretty good idea about what she is actually feeling. This is the moment where she says, all the light is gone. Music, it'll come back. All right, so moving on to song number 2. She is extolling his virtues, saying he is just the highest of men, even godlike in his virtue. Here's one of the texts that is disturbing to some people, or at least unappealing, because the text goes on to say, don't pay any mind to little me, you are like a star in the heavens, and just cheering you on here. Only the most glorious woman could be possibly deserving of the luck of being chosen by you, and I will bless her and hide in a corner and weep. My heart is broken, pay no mind, doesn't even matter. So it's understandable that that doesn't feel like a particularly egalitarian way of viewing things, but somebody who has been just knocked over by love, I think it might be understandable to have those moments. But let's look at the picture. The music has great energy. Oh, and look here. We have this beautiful, beautiful portrait, and she is not a shy, shrinking violet at all. It's very sensual. She's lying there exposed. Look at that background too. It is this beautiful, rich, royal blue. And I think, in my opinion, that is him. There's nothing in the room but him. That is just flat out the only thing there in her mind, in her body. And you'll hear the music is very energetic there. So let's hear just a moment. So she is full of enthusiasm, absolutely. The third song also has the language that might be a little bit questionable, and in fact, the translator was asked to maybe soften just a little bit sometimes. This one, she's a little bit gasping and astonished because, wonder of wonders, he chose her after all. So, let us have a look here. And an interesting thing, you see in the German, she calls herself the poor one, mich arme, poor little me. And in the translation also, he chose poor me, poor little me. And you might notice, I'll play a little bit for you in the recording. She doesn't say poor me, she just says me. It's like, okay, point made, we don't need to quite go that far. So she was having a little bit of opinion about that. And here we have a little sketch of her, thoughtful and a bit excited about that. I'll give you just a little taste of that song.
I swear I cannot believe a dream is all it can be. Of all those he might have chosen, he offers his heart to me. It seems he suddenly told me my love is all for you. It seems to me I'm dreaming, such a wonder cannot be true. Such a wonder cannot be true.
So, the next song, we have quite a change. She is actually looking at a ring that he has given her. And there may be echoes for us in our modern day of engagement rings and being so excited about it. There are certainly lots of pictures around of that sort of thing. But the music changes here. It's much calmer. It's got a flow to it. Something has happened here. She is simply saying, I'm devoted to you. I kiss you as a symbol. I want to serve and live for him. But there's a strength to the music all of a sudden where she seems to be gathering herself and her energy to say, I want to step up and become a woman. She's been girlish. We've heard the music sort of waver. So take a listen to a little bit of this. And there's a very beautiful image here. A very soft background. And look at that beautiful rose gold ring. That is very simple, beautifully represented there. So we'll put that up for you. One thing that I also think is interesting is the German expression mark that Schumann gave is the word innig, which can be misinterpreted, I think, a little bit towards thinking, oh, it's inward. But it also means intense, like, yes, I am going to step up and be what I can be for him. I want to make him glad every day that he chose me. And I think that's very well represented by Schumann. Quite beautiful.
I
So she's changed, hasn't she? She is on this path to becoming her more womanly self. But the next song, we're back to bouncing around excitedly because it is the wedding day. Dun, da, da, da. So it's buoyant and joyful. She's talking to her friends saying, come on girls, help me get ready. Let's make this as wonderful as we possibly can. And I'll play for you towards the end is quite an interesting thing that Robert Schumann does. She's very happy to be going to her new life, and just for a moment, the music turns minor, it kind of dips, saying, I'm saying goodbye to you for now, girls, bye. But bye, then the music gets happy again, and in fact, the piano plays us a little wedding march. And look here what we have in this rendering. Isn't that gorgeous? Look at all these flower petals. What a color. Just absolutely gorgeous. So let me find, I'll bring you back that image in a moment. Let me just find that song for you.
Sisters, come scatter roses before him, bring him the blossoms that bloom ever new. But shed a wistful tear for me, sisters, as I say farewell to you, as I say farewell to you.
The next song, we're on number 6 of 8, is absolutely fascinating to me, especially when I tell myself that this was 1840, because in this song, the woman is telling her husband that she's expecting. She's announcing her pregnancy to him. Who would make a song of that? That's absolutely fascinating to me, especially the sort of Victorian age where all those womanly functions were sort of tucked away out of view. And what a personal moment. Nobody else in the world knows. It's just the couple looking at each other going, we're going to be parents. Wow. And the text expresses, she's a little bit tearful, but she says, you're looking at me all surprised. Can't you guess what sometimes makes a woman cry? And she's anticipating. She says, in the future, I'm imagining the crib beside my bed, and smiling back up at me from the crib is your image. So she hopes the baby looks like him. Here's an interesting thing about our English translation. And our translator addresses this in the preface. He says, he found in the music this enormous sensuality. The text is rather subtle and elusive. And he said, well, the music tells us all these things that they couldn't possibly speak or describe at the time. So he actually takes the translation that he gives her a little more towards, let's make a baby and start our family, rather than we're expecting. Anyway, it's subtle, but it's an important change, I think. And anyway, a beautiful and really interesting moment. The music is so different, very sustained and joyous. And let's see what kind of artwork we have for that. Ah, look here. She is entirely happy. He is admiring her. There's that beautiful blue again. Just this lovely domestic scene. Let's hear just a little bit of that. I'll bring this back to you in a moment. So, very special. That's the first picture where we see him actually represented in a line drawing instead of just as a color, though both are there. So I think that's a very beautiful thing. And the next song, number 7, Baby Has Arrived. And this is pure joy, happy mama, bouncing a happy baby, and feeling that right at this moment, there's nothing else she really wanted in life. And the colors have warmed up in our etching. And there she is, this lovely mama and child. So let's hear just a little bit of that.
And where my heart beats here at my breast, here is the one that I love the best. I said as a girl and I'll say as a wife, love is the only true joy in life. Each passing pleasure was joy to me. Now I have learned what joy can be. Nursing a child here at your heart, to help a new life make a start. Only a mother knows the joy of loving a baby girl or boy. How
So just lovely, pure happiness, yes? Then we come to our very last song. And as I look at the cover here, it's very interesting to me because the end of the story is really sad. I have a feeling it's unexpectedly, but the husband has died. And we look, the first line of the poetry, Nun hast du mir den ersten Schmerz getan, is like a stab to the heart to me. She's telling him, now you've hurt me for the first time by leaving before I was ready. Yeah? And as we look at the page here, if you look carefully, there are marks here. And it seems that somebody has handled those. I didn't see those on any other of the pages that we've looked at. And perhaps there's darkness within as well. I think it's quite fascinating. Everything is fading to black for her. There he is, looking peaceful, and her back is turned. She's barely looking at him. She's not looking at him, in fact. So I think we'll listen to this song. I'll bring that back to you entirely, the whole end of the cycle to finish up today, because it's such a special completion. The music to begin with is very stark. The chords slap. The voice has no lilt. She's almost singing the same notes. She's in fact kind of yelling at him at the beginning. Look at you in that cold sleep, you jerk. Pretty much. Gradually she softens a bit into this sorrow, this bleak feeling. She says, I'm going to draw the veils around me and just go into myself where I can possibly find some memories of you. And Schumann does an astonishing thing to finish up. He has the piano gradually wind its way back around to the beginning song. And I think it's extraordinarily beautiful. You hear the pulsing again. It's as though she's going back to the very start of their relationship. But there's no melody. The voice is gone. There's no song there because he's no longer there. So let's find a little bit of that.
You sleep.
And there we have A Woman's Love and Life. I hope you've enjoyed looking at this beautiful art book today. So I'm going to go over and join Raphael now, and we'll see if you all have questions about it.
Thank you, Anne, for that wonderful tour of this, this amazing book. So the first question is, will we hear any of the songs in the gallery or on our virtual tour? Yes, this book is actually not in the exhibition. It's one of the outtakes from the exhibition. It gives you a sense of the depth of this collection. But we will have the songs available, hopefully, on,
yes.
Online. So when you see the book yourself on the virtual version of it filmed online, you can also hear the songs as well.
What actually happened there is within that beautiful box a cassette tape of the performance that you heard from 1989, and I was able to get that transferred. Thank you, Jax Hassler, for doing that over so that we could hear some of those excerpts. But I will make sure actually that the newly transferred recording stays with the book.
So, another question that came up from the audience is, did the poet construct these poems with the idea of having a song cycle written, perhaps even by Schumann?
No, and Schumann was not the first to write, to set those poems either. It was an interesting time. All these great poets and all these great composers came in and they grabbed those goodies because there were certain poems that just seemed to ask for musical fill-in. So poetry was very much an art that stood by itself, and poets varied, of course, as far as whether they were glad to have collaboration like that, to have somebody come in and take over their work, or whether they were insulted and felt like there was quite enough music there already.
Interesting. Could you tell us, Anne, in terms of Schumann's opus, his production of song cycles, where does this one rank? This one seems kind of an unusual story. Is it kind of typical for his song cycles, or is this an unusual one?
It is. Each of his were distinct. He has two, strictly speaking, song cycles and two other groups that are called Liederkreis. There are also songs that are connected, but more by subject. It's like a wreath of songs, so somewhat of a cycle. And all four of those groups are very well known. The larger song cycle with poems of Heinrich Heine of his is Dichterliebe, and that is a poet's love. And we have a long discussion by a poet, many more songs. This one is much shorter. I think they both are considered musically very important and equal, I would say, given some people's opinion about the text of this one. But the feminine viewpoint was unusual and distinctive. And so it's definitely considered a highly important work among his song works.
So the idea is that the voice of the woman, actually as the narrator, the speaker, was an unusual thing.
Absolutely.
In the poetry and in the song cycle. Okay. And where does sort of follow up on that question, where does the song cycle rank in terms of his better known cycles? Is this one that's performed, that's well known? Where does it stand in terms of Schumann's production?
I would say it is probably the most often performed of his cycles. The larger one, the Dichterliebe, because it's longer, there's lots more to memorize and take on, is perhaps done a little bit less. On the other hand, some performers have stayed away from it because they didn't connect with the spirit of the text. But he is not one who has 10, 12, 14 cycles. He has many songs, many groups of songs, but these 4 or so cycles that he has are rather equally done, I would say.
Wonderful. Thank you. One final question, and that's about this concept, this genre of the artist's book. So you've sort of had the pleasure of probing it, exploring it. What do you think about this genre? I mean, is it an effective thing to have this kind of a number of artists coming together around one work or a couple of works? What do you think about it?
I love it so much. I just love it. It is fascinating to me and always so informative to have another artist's response. And I always feel like I learn something. A great joy for me is looking through, and all these things I've been telling you, by the way, are purely my own gatherings, my own connections, but I find that thrilling. And for me to feel like I discovered, I see what you did there. This is really interesting. I see this connection, and that just sets the world humming for me. I find that very thrilling. I do love the dimensionality of it as well. Just, I think as a kid, I loved pop-up books that had the little scenes come up. I loved, we see cards that are not just a flat surface, but have some art work on the top of it. And these books are such a deep dive into something, and I just feel we come away with a much fuller sort of understanding and appreciation for the material.
Beautiful, beautiful. So it's an interesting piece, this book that is a new sort of locus for all of this, the original content of the poem, the original content of the music, the more recent performer, then a visual artist, a translator. I mean, it really is a collaborative effort all around this book. And I love your descriptions of the works of art themselves, the not just the song, but the images. So
how did I do, artist?
You did very well, very well. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, really a marvelous project, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, good. That gives us an indication of the kinds of books that we'll experience in this exhibition. There's lots of books like this. Nothing as complicated as this one with all the various parts, all the moving parts. But it does open up this genre of the artist's book for an audience, a genre that most of us aren't really familiar with.
I can't wait to see all the rest of them.
Well, thank you so much, Anne. This has been a delight. Really, thank you for your erudition and for your visceral responses and your intellectual responses to this marvelous work. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So I not only want to thank Anne, but I also want to thank our marvelous audience today. And thank you so much for your questions and joining us. Our next reveal will happen on Thursday, October 1st at 11 a.m. And at that point, you'll be joining us for a conversation with the founding director of the Codex International Book Fair and Symposium. He's a San Francisco-based artist, printer, publisher, and bibliophile, Peter Rutledge Koch. And if you'd like to see the complete program with the links to all the Zoom webcasts, please go to our webpage. That's www.umt.edu/Montana Museum. And that's all one word, Montana Museum. www.umt.edu/Montana Museum. Until then, take very good care, and again, thank you for joining us.